We are back. Revinyl once again. He's Craig. I'm Shawn. We are ready to roll. We got a fun one today. I'm looking forward to this, Craig.
Yeah,
We're gonna
we got a listener email. If you're
yeah,
ready, I'll go ahead and read it out to you.
read it.
All right. This is from Dylan in Atlanta. It says, "Hello, kind sirs. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Question for you. Would you be able to pick your brains a little bit regarding new wave? I grew up a hard rock metal guy, but got into the 80s new wave stuff later. I have grown to love a lot of this stuff, but I didn't originally listen to at the time. Of course, I have a bunch of the albums and love a lot of the stuff that I originally didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to, i.e., The Smiths, The Cure, Pet Shop Boys, etc. What albums from that era do you consider must-haves? What are your personal faves? What about Dark Horse albums that you love? Appreciate your thoughts. I'll hang up and listen. Dylan. Love it. Love that email. Thanks, Dylan.
I love that. Yeah. Boy, do I have a lot of thoughts on that. There are so many it's so funny too because there's so many comparisons actually for me, new wave and metal. They both came up in the '80s and then faded also by the '80s
Right.
into the '80s. They both were very much a great music scene, but it was you could look at a band and go, "Okay, they're heavy metal," or you could look at a band and go, "They're new wave." There was a look, right? There was a new wave look.
Yep.
There was a heavy metal, whether you call it hair metal, Kevin hates that phrase, but there was a look that they had. Versus rock and roll bands, you can look at and go, "Well, I don't know." Maybe you just look at them and go, "Maybe they're hard rock, maybe they're pop, maybe they're yacht rock, whatever." When you look at a Kajagoogoo, you know they're new wave.
Yeah.
If you look at
Flock of Seagulls
yeah,
being the most obvious, right?
flock flock of seagulls, and then conversely, when you look at Rat or Motley Crue, you know that they're heavy metal, hard rock. So,
Right.
there's a lot of even though they're 2 totally disparate types of music, they have a lot of similarities. The other similarity that I'll mention with heavy metal and hard rock, especially in the '80s, production was a big thing, guitar riffs were a really big thing. Synthesizers changed everything for new wave. New wave wouldn't exist without the synthesizer,
Right. Yeah,
and it
for the
was the
most part.
formation yeah, it happened in the '70s. Brian Eno, Roxy Music, all of that started happening, and there were all these other bands that were coming up, but all of that influenced what became new wave, and really the synthesizer, those were the riffs, and we'll talk about that a little bit, the synthesizer riffs that pulled you in on those songs. So, I've got a list of 25 songs that I'm gonna talk about. This is exactly why we do this podcast, is getting the feedback from listeners, and then really and I'm gonna sound a little bit arrogant here, but at the end of this podcast and people get out their pen and paper, you don't need an Apple playlist after this. I'm the 25 songs I'm gonna give you, I know that sounds really arrogant, but
Mm.
you're not going to need a playlist after this because I'm gonna give you the 25 best songs in new wave, and I didn't try to go obscure, ridiculous, but I did, in some cases, avoid the obvious
Right.
and maybe go I just went with what I thought was the best song.
Yeah.
This playlist is a all killer, no filler, all bangers. Here we go. Do you wanna do your albums first and run through those?
Yeah, I can do my albums. I've got 10 what I consider must-haves albums, and these are not the only must-haves. So these are just things that the first ones that came to the top of my head. And then I decided to go with 5 Dark Horse albums. So I stuck to my homework. I paid attention. I stuck to my homework and stuck with albums. Shawn, of course, had to deviate and go with songs. But that's okay. That's how we roll here. We give a little diversity. So I'll cut him some slack. I think,
Well, there's a reason for that, though, because
okay.
we would have ended up picking 5 of the same albums, and it just would have been redundant. I know that there's gonna be some stuff that you pick that I'd pick.
I'll be
That's why
surprised. Maybe you might be right. I would be
I'll raise
surprised
my
if
hand
some
every
of
time.
these that I pick that you would pick, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm gonna raise my hand every time. I won't say anything, I'll just go, "If that was on my list, I'll go like this."
Okay, cool. All right. So let's start with the must-haves, and I'm gonna go in chronological order. So this starts in 1980. There's quite a few albums from 1980. There's 3 here that I have for you. I'm gonna start with Echo and the Bunnymen's Crocodiles. This is bar none my favorite Echo and the Bunnymen album, and I love them. I love Heaven Up Here. Follow-up album, Porcupine is really good. Their 4th album, for some reason, it's eluding me, is their probably most critically acclaimed album. It's my least favorite. It's not as jagged. I love this album so much, though. It's edgy. Uh, it's the post-punk side of new wave, which is what I love about it. Some tracks to really check out: "Do It Clean," "Pride," "Rescue," "Pictures on My Wall." You can't go wrong with any of those songs, but those are really my 4 favorites. So, starting with Echo, and then we're gonna move to a completely different sound, and this goes into a bit of a reggae vibe, and that's English Beat. I Just Can't Stop It. 1980 once again. This album is killer. Now, I'm giving you 3 songs here, but by no means is there a single song on this album that's not good. It is a stone cold classic. Of course, you know "Mirror in the Bathroom." That's what the album kicks off with. It's excellent. I can hear that song a billion times, never get tired of it. "Twist and Crawl" is amazing, and then there's a song called "Click Click." Oh, man. These guys put punk and reggae and fused them together brilliantly. Love this record. Um, Shows the diversity here of new wave in general. Moving on to my 3rd album, that's XTC's Black Sea from 1980 once again. I'm going with this album because this is what I discovered how I discovered them. Their biggest album, is completely different from this. It really is. Uh if you know Dear God, if you know anything off of that album, it is a very lush, very orchestrated. They evolved into something else because at one point they were a live band, and by the time they put out their last several albums, he being Andy Partridge, developed crippling stage fright. They couldn't play anymore, and so that really shaped and molded how he wrote and the music that they were putting out. It wasn't as energetic, but at this point, I feel like that kind of spastic new wave edge that they had with, white music and some of their earlier albums have been fine tuned to just a perfect new wave slash post punk album. The first 4 tracks, really from Respectable Street all the way to Love at First Sight, are perfect. Towers of London was a big hit, brilliant song. And one of my favorite songs from them, period, is Burning with Optimism's Flames. You just don't get any wittier than XTC. And this to me was just them at their prime when you come to the visceral side of the band. All right, so we go to 1981, following up with probably the quirkiest album on my list. It is excellent, though, no doubt. It's a band called the DBs, stands for decibels. It is so good, but it's quirky power pop. So this is the power pop side of new wave. It's awesome. Black and White, She's Not Worried, Bad Reputation, all amazing songs. They have a song on here called "The Fight." It's hilarious. It's just so funny. Um, so it's a humorous side of things, a little bit more spastic. His vocals take some getting used to. I love it, absolutely love it. But so that's the DBs. Next up, also from 1981, one of my favorite bands of the era, one of probably the biggest bands of the era, and I feel like they, to me, were the epitome of new wave, and that's the Psychedelic Furs. Talk, Talk, Talk is a brilliant album. Um, All killer, no filler. But if you got to go for songs, No Tears, Into You Like a Train, It Goes On, All of This and Nothing. Oh, it is just absolutely Pretty in Pink. Of course, people know. Excellent song. This whole album to me really shaped and molded me into new wave. It got me into new wave, and then I discovered Echo and the Bunnymen. Then I love the Furs. Absolutely just love them. Follow it up with one of the biggest albums, and this is for you vinyl heads. I think probably one of the biggest bangs of the buck you can get in any record store, and that's the Fix's Reach the Beach. Phenomenal record. 1983. Now, one thing leads to another. Saved by Zero, awesome songs. Other songs on there, The Sign of Fire, Liner, and then the album capper called Outside. Give that one time to sink in. It's so cool. This is a phenomenal, phenomenal album. You will find this in any record store, guarantee, in really good shape for less than $10. Usually around $7, $8.
Love it.
Biggest bang for the buck, without a doubt. Now, the next album I know Shawn is a big fan of, and because he loves this band, I don't think this is his favorite album, but it is my favorite album from Simple Minds, and that's Sparkle in the Rain from 1984. Love, love, love this album. This is what got me into them aside from the hits. It was the album that I found after hearing the big songs, watching Breakfast Club and hear Don't You Forget About Me and hearing these big songs. The first album I found was Sparkle in the Rain, and I didn't care. I love the song so much. I didn't care that those songs weren't on that album, but the songs that are on that album are killer. Starts off with Up on the Catwalk. I love that song. I think Waterfront probably has one of the best bass lines ever. It is just such a great song. And one of my favorite songs on there is Sea Moon Cry Like a Baby. It's just different. They were just such a remarkable band. This is a prime example of a band that was much greater than the singles that you heard on the radio, regardless of how good they were. Absolutely phenomenal. All right, so we'll move on to this. Looks like my
Would've
eighth.
By the way, I would have had a really tough time because yeah, New Gold Dream is my favorite album by them,
Yeah,
without a doubt, but Sparkle in the Rain and Once Upon a Time, really close second. It could almost be a three-way tie. Those 3 albums are just back
excellent.
to back to back, incredible.
Yeah, I mean, if I was going for duplicates, I think I could have gotten 2 from Simple Minds for sure. The next one I think is definitely not gonna be on, I think the next 2 will not be on, Shawn's radar as much. Huge fan of this band. It's a little bit edgier. In fact, they're still doing stuff to this day, and it's super, super heavy. They're kind of like a metal band at this point. But back then, they were just a really cool, aggressive kind of post-punk new wave band. That's Killing Joke. They have an album from 1985 called Nighttime. You do know a song from there called 80s. That song is a banger, but so is Darkness Before Dawn, Multitudes. I love Multitudes. And then Europe is probably my favorite song on that album. It is just blistering. It's melodic. It's got a really cool groovy bass lines to it. His voice is just so distinct. His name is Jazz Coleman. Just love that band. Love that. Bar none my favorite album from them. All right. That's from 1985. 1986. Let's talk about a band called Susie and the Banshees. Now, I loved Kaleidoscope. I love Juju. I love those 2 albums a lot. But when they released Tinderbox, oh my God, this might be one of my favorite albums on this list. It is so good. The song that you would know from that is a song called Cities Lie in Dust. It is just an absolute banger. Got a lot of radio play, but the Sweetest Chill, The Unrest, Land's End, it ends with Land's End. Oh, it's so good. Just the bass lines to it, the guitar work was real intricate. It didn't get real heavy and distorted. They let the clean guitar ring out, which I really love. But when the distortion comes in, it didn't muffle things. One of my favorite bands. Love Susie. And I'm going to cap things off with an album we have definitely raved before. This is probably the one that uh, Dylan probably already knows, but you can't go wrong with Depeche Mode's Violator, 1990. It is absolutely a Stone Cold classic from start to finish. This is when they went from being more of a dancey new wave band to being more of a not just electronic, but just a little bit more um I don't know. They got a little bit darker, a little bit more thought provoking. It's still you could groove to it. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, I guess you could dance to it. But they've shifted directions, got a little bit darker with this album. I love it. World in My Eyes, the way that album kicks off is awesome. Halo is one of my favorite songs of all time, definitely on this album. And it was a hit. I mean, Enjoy the Silence and but this song was a single, but it still remains one of my Policy of Truth. I love that song so much. Every song of this album is a classic. Those are my 10 must haves. So now I'm going to
Yeah.
start diving into some dark horses. Before I dive into dark horses, any questions, any comments there, Shawn?
No, no, that's good. There were a few of those I forgot to raise my hand. There were a few of those that would have been on my list too, or well, the Simple Minds, I probably would have had a different album, but yeah, Psychedelic Furs, Echo and the Bunnymen. I've got yeah, when I get my list up, you'll see I have a little bit of a theme here that I'll mention. But yeah, yeah, fire away, and then we'll jump into my list.
Cool. Okay, so we're gonna dig a little bit deeper here. We're gonna go chronological, and this is first album's gonna go back to the '70s. If you are a fan of the Cars, specifically the self-titled album and Candio, which to me are their two best records, that's debatable, but my two favorite albums. There's a band called 2020 that is just stunningly good. And to me, the Cars, another one of those bands like the psychedelic verse, the Cars were kind of like the quintessential new wave band. So was 2020. I didn't really know about them until probably maybe 10, 15 years ago. It's been a while. It hasn't been that long. This album's a stone cold classic. It's just called 2020, 1979. There's a song called Yellow Pills, which is a single. Great song. Remember the Lightning? Oh, I love that. It's probably my favorite song on there. And Leave Your World Behind. This album is stunning. They have a follow up called Look Out. Highly recommended as well. I own that on vinyl. I'm looking for this one. This is the album to get. The next one goes hand in hand with Echo and the Bunnymen. In fact, this guy collaborated with Ian McCullough from Echo and the Bunnymen. That's Teardrop Explodes. It's Julian Cope. They have an album called Kilimanjaro that also from 1980, same year that Echo released Crocodiles. Oh, so good. Secondhand Books, or Secondhand is a great song. Books, which is his version of Reddit and Books, which was written by both McCullough and Cope. And Reddit and Books is in on Crocodiles. Excellent song. Completely different version though. Completely. So I recommend listening to Echo and then listening to this, and you hear it. It's really good. When I Dream and Use Me, which is a bonus track. If you could, I say this because it's so different. It's just Julian Cope with an acoustic guitar. It's absolutely gorgeous. It shouldn't fit on the album, but it does, and that's why I love the fact that the imports created that as a bonus track. Killer, killer song. So we're gonna move from 80 to 81. This next album is not an album; it's an EP, but it's that good. It's that impactful. That's Mission of Burma. They have an EP called Signals, Calls, and Marches. I'm telling you, this the whole thing is amazing, but there are several tracks. That's When I Reach for My Revolver is one of the coolest songs ever. Several people have covered it. One of my favorite bands, Catherine Wheel, did a cover of it during their early days, which was great. All World Cowboy Romance sounds like a funny title, but it's a great song. But that transitioning into Academy Fight Song, Academy Fight Song is one of my favorite new wave post punk songs, period. It is catchy, it is gritty, um, it is edgy, but it is so catchy that it could be a single today. It's just such a great
It is
song.
it is one of my favorite songs of all time.
Yeah.
One of the absolute REM covered it at one point.
Yep.
They used to do it some and you could hear that. I mean, you hear that song, you go, "Yeah, I could hear REM doing that." I love there's a the other favorite song by them, and it's not on that album, I think it's called Trem 2, like TREM.
Yeah. I think that's
Just
on.
mostly
Yep.
guitar with feedback in a loop
Yep.
and then mumbling some stuff, but it is so hypnotic that I could listen to that song 10 times a day.
Yeah. I think that's
Love it.
off the self titled album. Self titled album's great, but for an EP to come out with this EP, it's that impactful. Yeah, I mean, it stands with a lot of great albums. So the next one is a band that I have promoted. In fact, I think that was one of my albums. I think that was my album of 1982 on Schizophrenic Music is, underrated or overlooked. It's not underrated. People that know this album, it's highly regarded. It is excellent. The copy of the CD that I bought way back in the day actually had Moby doing a cover of one of their songs. It's excellent. Um, That's the bongos, drums along the Hudson. Oh, man, I'm telling you. The bulrushes, clay midgets, telephone lens, certain harbors. Hell, just stop there and just listen to the whole album. It is so catchy. It is edgy. Every single song is an earworm. It's crazy. Uh, Another one of those albums, if you find it, you won't see it as often as you find Fixes Reach the Beach, but if you do find it, you can find it for $5. And it is worth that times 10. I mean, it's such a great album. And then the next one I think is probably out of this entire list the most overlooked. I don't Nobody talks about these guys. It's such a great album. It kind of would fit in more of the pop sense of new wave back in the day. It was edgy, but they had a gloss to their music, but the gloss didn't kill the edge, if that makes sense. There's something that you could hear this being played in a movie in 1983 or a TV show, and it wouldn't sound off putting, but it still had edge. And that's a band called Red Rockers. They had an album called Good as Gold. And let me tell you, one of the best singles back then, nobody talks about, is a song called China. That song is so catchy. What Dreams Fade Away, Until It All Falls Down is so cool. Such a great, great band. Very overlooked. So there you have it. 5 Dark Horse albums and 10 must have new wave albums. Hope you enjoy, Dylan.
Love it. Yeah, Dylan, that's a lot to go listen to. And every one of those, there's a couple of those that I haven't listened to much, a couple that I'm not as familiar with, but I at least know the a lead track off of every one of those. And then of course some of the staples like Psychedelic Furs, of which you're going to hear me talk about a few of those as well. So I'm going to jump into my list here. I think there's 25 songs here. The last song I'm going to mention is actually the one song that to me, not influenced the rest, but the band influenced the rest. Here we go, and I'm just gonna run down the list. In some cases, I'll list the album title as well, and then the year. I gotta start with probably it really might be my favorite song ever, and my friends make fun of me. I say this all the time, "Oh, that's probably my favorite song." I say that for 20 or 30 songs, but this really truly might be my favorite song ever, and that's "It's My Life" by Talk Talk. There's just something about that song, that synthesized bass line. Yes, it's produced. It sounds like it came from the early '80s, but that is a perfect song for me, and I've always loved that song. Stops me in my tracks every time it comes on. I hear it. It's funny, there's a at my gym, they've got this loop radio play thing, and almost every night when I'm there, "It's My Life" comes on, and every time I have to stop. There's a certain part in the song that I love the most. I stop and listen to it. I love Talk Talk, love that song. They have so many great songs, but that to me is the song. Okay, "If You Were Here" by the Thompson Twins, which I first heard on the 16 Candles soundtrack or during the movie at the very end. I've always loved that song. Pre-Shazam, pre-Google, pre-Apple Music, when that movie came out, that song captivated me, and I didn't know who it was for a long time. I guess at some point I probably figured out, 'cause I was pretty young then, figured out I could watch the credits and find out the name. I think that's how I finally figured it out, but I kept going, "I love this song. Who is this?" So, Thompson Twins, and I'm not a huge Thompson Twins fan. Lies, 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 I love that song. To me, when they got into Doctor Doctor and all that, it got a little bit kitschy, a little bit too pop for me, but that song to me is hard to beat. Promises, 1984, Naked Eyes. Oh my gosh, what a song. I've always loved that song. There's something about that song to me, and they had other hits, Always Something There to Remind Me, which is cover of Burt Bacharach. Great song, but Promises, Promises to me, the best, never got better. Next up, 1982 from the album Kissing to Be Clever, a band that a lot of people back then and even now think of as a little more just out there because of Boy George, and I don't think they get the credit they deserve. The song to me that abs and they had a off the first couple of albums had a lot of great songs, but Time, Clock of the Heart, that is one of the best songs of the era, in my opinion. It is just a phenomenal song. Forget Yeah, he had this whole look thing that no one was prepared for, but man, could he sing. And, eh, I honestly think he captured a lot of attention by coming up with this look that was different, but it probably took away from him a little bit because he was such an amazing. I wish people would have focused more on his voice and not his look, but nonetheless. Okay, next up, speaking of a look, talk about the maybe other than Duran Duran, the pretty boy of all pretty boy looks was Spandau Ballet. You got True, which is one of the greatest songs of the era, but the song for me was Only When You Leave. Gosh, what a song. That guitar in that song is just great. Next up, Psychedelic Furs, Love My Way. Love that song so much. Then we have 1982, band that you mentioned earlier, The Fix. It was really hard for me, and by the way, let me mention almost everything I meant to say this earlier. The theme for this list for me was I really tried to keep it between 81 and 84 for the most part, not because of New Gold Dream, 81, 82, 83, 84, Simple Minds, but to me, 81 through 84 was the classic quintessential version, or time period. I think I have one song on here that's outside of 1984, but this one right in the middle of all that is just incredible. The Fix off of Reach the Beach and that Stand or Fall. They actually had some songs that I like more. Secret Separation is my favorite song by The Fix, but that being in '86, to me, they were starting to move away from the new wave sound into more of a guitar-oriented band. 1982, Stand or Fall, very much great new wave sound. The one that was outside of '84, I'll mention now, New Order, 1987, True Faith off of Substance. That song to me, they were a couple years after the heyday of new wave, but that song is absolute perfection. If Talk Talk It's My Life is my favorite song of all time, True Faith is probably in the top 5. Absolutely love that song from the first time I heard it. Then we moved backwards to 1981, Speak and Spell, Depeche Mode, the song is Dreaming of Me. Depeche Mode had so many great songs in those early albums. But to me, Dreaming of Me was a song that stood out above all others. Always loved that song the most. Then we go to Pet Shop Boys, West End Girls. Later on, I kind of fell out of favor with Pet Shop Boys, just didn't really capture me as much anymore. But West End Girls, to me, that is one of those, if an alien dropped down from Mars and wanted to know about new wave, that's one of the first songs I would play, would be, here's a great example of new wave music.
If you listen to the Schizophrenic Music Podcast, Kevin and I were just talking about that song the other day.
Mm, what a song, man. Just so perfect. And again, all these songs, they were driven by that synthesizer sound. And here's another great example, 1981. The album is called Architecture and Morality, which is OMD, or Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. The song is Souvenir. Absolutely love that song. Along those same lines, 1982, a band that doesn't get talked about much, doesn't get remembered much, but they were so good, is the band China Crisis. You ever listen to them? I love them. And they had a number of great songs. Wishful Thinking was probably the one that everyone that's the one that everyone knows the most, but I think this was their very first single. The song is called African and White. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Sorry, I
Such a
had
great
the
song.
mic muted there, but yeah, good band. Really good band.
Yeah, and that song to me, that was just again, '82. It kinda has that same production value that Talk Talk had on the early records. It's just there's something about that that always draws me in. Then there's a band called Haircut 100, and they had some big hits, Love Plus One being one of them. That first album, Pelican West from 1982, had a song on it called Fantastic Day. Such a great song. 1983, the album The Hurting, the band Tears for Fears, the song is Change. Again, Tears for Fears had so many great songs, but that being right out of the gate, first album, that is such a great new wave record.
That was almost on my list, that album.
So good. Then I had to mention this band twice, only because they probably are. It was so hard to pick one song for this band, because the first song I'm gonna mention is the one that started it all, and then the second song is undeniably, in my opinion, the best song they ever did. The band being Duran Duran, you can't have a new wave singles list and not list out a Duran Duran song. So for me, the tie is Girls on Film. I remember when I saw the video for the first time, I wasn't supposed to see the video. It was banned in a lot of countries, and it felt, wow, as a young kid, oh boy, this is different than a, a John Mellencamp video or a Bruce Springsteen video. This is different. Who are
True.
these guys? That song is so incredible. But then on the next album, so that was on their debut. On the next album, Rio, the standout track for me is Save a Prayer. I love the bass line in that. I love the synthesizer in that. The vocals, just close to a perfect song. All right, 1983, this is a huge hit, so I'm not digging deep here. This is anything that every other new wave list out there is gonna have, but it's such a great song. Kaja Gugu from their album White Feathers, the song Too Shy. It's just it's an incredible new wave song. Then I think maybe the only American band I have on here, I think they're American. Yeah, Berlin, song "The Metro" from Pleasure Victim, 1982. Just
Mhm.
great song. When that came out, that was just something that you knew it was different, it was super cool. Then going along with some other female 1984, Bananarama, Cruel Summer. Gosh, that song's been played in so many movies, so many playlists, but there's a reason for that. Then also along the female track, 1982, Yaz from Upstairs at Eric, Don't Go. Oh, what a song. Then we have the guy that gets overlooked so much, and I don't even know how new wave he was. He wasn't new wave in my opinion after the first or second album, but that's Howard Jones. I don't think he gets enough credit. He had so many great songs, but What Is Love is just a phenomenal song. For anyone that doesn't know Howard Jones, go check him out. Definitely had the hair of new wave, but he kind of fell out of the new wave thing after a while and became more pop. Last 2, save almost the best for last. Simple Minds, 1982, the album was called New Gold Dream, 81, 82, 83, 84. The song is New Gold Dream. That opening synthesizer to me, it just gets me going. That is one of the best songs. I hope people go check that song out because it is so good. And then last on my list, really the guys that if you asked any of the people on this list where they were influenced by, every one of them would say Roxy Music. I know they would. Roxy Music laid the standard for all these bands. Brian Eno, that whole sound. And to me, and I'm not the biggest Roxy Music fan in the world, but More Than This is just it's one of those songs. It's one of those rare songs too where I actually like the verse better than the chorus. You have songs like that? I mean, usually
Oh, yeah.
everybody gravitates chorus. For me, this song, the verse part of this song is the best. And then that guitar solo is it's one of the best guitar solos. It's just perfect. It's not too long, it's not too flashy, but it fits the mood and it's got that swirling synthesizer in the background. Absolutely love that song.
Great song.
So that's my list. Go make that a playlist, y'all. If you do, you will be happy for the rest of your life because you can't go wrong with those songs.
Very nice.
Questions, comments.
No, I mean, it's, a solid lengthy list that I don't think anybody could have arguments on. If you know new wave, I think you're gonna
That's right.
most of those songs, so
Well, let's do this. Let's wrap up with this. I thought about this earlier today when I was thinking about this new wave is why don't we go back in the time machine to 1981,
yeah.
December of 81, when new wave was just starting to take off, and let's do our top 10 singles from the UK and the US. You want to do 81, 82, 83, 84? You pick it.
Oh, I mean, you had 81 in your mind, do it. Go for it.
Let's do 81 because I think what we'll find is there won't be any new wave. The US really hadn't taken new wave just yet, but the UK, they definitely have. So I think we're gonna find some new wave acts, in the top 10 singles of December of 81 for the UK.
Cool.
Probably not so much for the U. So I'll
Okay.
go UK first, and this ought to be interesting. We'll just run down the list here. Okay, number 10, Godly and Cream, Wedding Bells. They were obviously 10cc
Yeah.
offshoot, and I guess they were kinda new wave. They were kind of in that realm. Alright, number 9, Earth, Wind& and Fire, Let's Groove. Oh my gosh, I love that song so much.
It's a good song.
I'm I love Earth, Wind& and Fire. Alright, number 8, Madness, It Must Be Love. Even though they were
Great song.
more reggae, they were still kind of in that new wave. They were a part of that new British new wave at the
Yeah,
time,
Kevin, if
so
you're listening, you'll love that. That's a Labby Sifry song.
yeah, that's right. Okay, number 7, here we go. Adam and the Ants, Ant Rap. I
Nice.
love it. Number 6, well, this is definitely not new wave. ABBA, One of Us, okay. Number 5, here we go, new wave, Soft Cell, Bedsitter.
Yep.
Number 4, Diana Ross, Why Do Fools Fall in Love?
Yeah.
Number 3, Julio Iglesias. Oh my god. Begin to Begin? Don't know that song. Keep on
Interesting. I
moving.
wonder if that has anything to do with the song that, wonder if that has anything to do with REM's Begin to Begin. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. May have influenced them. Alright, number 2, Cliff Richard, Daddy's Home.
Wow.
Alright.
Nice. Still doing
Num
it. Hard to believe he
Yeah.
was still doing it at that point, but he was massive in the UK.
Oh my
Massive.
gosh.
He was like Elvis in
Almost
the UK.
absolutely, and almost unknown in the US,
Yep.
other than a couple of odd hits along the way. Number 1, this is so great, 'cause this actually was on my original list. I had to pare it down, took this one off. Human League, Don't You Want Me. Unbelievable
Nice.
song, love that song. Okay, that's the UK. So in that we had I'll these are the ones I would say could fall in new wave. Human League for sure, Soft Cell for sure. I believe Adam and the Ants was really kind of a new wave-ish band. They were a little more post-punk.
Yeah.
Madness could fall into that,
Yep.
and
Sure.
Godly and Cream could probably be considered somewhat new wave.
Yep.
Now when we switch over to the top 10 for the US in '81, I don't think there's a single new wave band on here. Again, because it hadn't hit in the US yet. Number 10, I Can't Go For That, No Can Do, Hall& and Oates. I mean,
Nice.
one of one of the greatest songs ever. Love it.
Kinda new wave-esque, not really new wave,
Yeah,
but they fell in that same realm, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, had that good, yeah, that's a good point. Alright, number 9, and this is such a great song, but it's so overplayed, Journey, Don't Stop Believing.
Yep.
Number 8, Police, Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic.
You know, they're a band, kinda ran new wave adja they weren't a new wave band, but they were new wave adjacent, so
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. I could make an argument for number 7 being new wave-ish, Quarter Flash, Harden My Heart.
yeah.
Little more horns, saxophone, but
Mhm.
still.
Yep.
Number 6, boy, Diana Ross, Why Do Fools Fall in Love.
Well, had
Number
it going, man.
5,
Still
she
keeping that
still had it
disco
going.
she's keeping that disco alive.
That's right. Speaking of which, soul, funk, Commodores, Oh No. Number 4, I remember this song so much from when I was a little kid, Rod Stewart, Young Turks. It always bothered me because I was like, "He doesn't say Turks in the song.
So
Why isn't it called Young Hearts?"
I know, such a great song.
Oh, love that song so much. Number 3, also on the UK list, Earth, Wind& and Fire, Let's Groove. Number
Yep.
2, I'll say this, it was not a new wave song, but it had new wave elements for sure. In fact, because of who did the synthesizer on the record, it could be considered a new wave-ish song, and that's Waiting for a Girl Like You, Foreigner.
Mhm.
Of course, Thomas Dolby
Yeah,
doing the synthesizer on that song. I love that song so much. That's always been and that the
great song.
synthesizer in that is undeniable. And then number 1, Olivia Newton-John, Physical.
Nice.
Before we before we drop, I'm just gonna look at '82. I just wanna see if by '82 there were new wave bands in the top 10 US. Not so much, not even in December of '82. But then on the UK side, you had Culture Club, Jam, Human League, Wham! Madness, Blancmange, I think is how you say it,
Blanc
Blancmange, and then Modern Romance kinda sounds like it would be a so by '82, the UK was covered in new wave in the top 10, so maybe we'll revisit that
I
again.
I think new wave is a lot more open-ended than people think. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm just looking at my list, and it's post-punk, it's reggae, there's some funk, there's some psychedelic in there, there's some pop, there's a little bit of gothic, there's some dance. I mean, it's all over the map. Power pop, I mean, it's all over the map. I mean, I think it's hard to really pin down new wave because it was really more of a scene than it was a genre.
yeah,
Um, and that's what made it really cool. The visual aspect was big too, because you got to think with MTV popping up and stuff, it gave everybody an impression right off the bat of, oh, and it shaped not only the sound, but it shaped the look of these bands. It did the same thing, man, MTV before they were a total crap show, were very, very influential, and new wave was a big part of it, and then that transitioned into hard rock and metal. So
yeah. Well, and it's interesting too because up until new wave came along, again, broad here, but the main instrument in a lot of cases was a synthesizer. And in order to play a synthesizer, you were standing behind something versus most rock bands, whether it was Zeppelin or The Who or anyone else, right out front, other than the lead singer, was Jimmy Page or Pete Townsend or whomever was in the band playing guitar. You were right there with it. Synthesizer, you were kind of backed away from the stage. You were behind this big thing,
yeah,
and I wonder if that contributed at all, maybe even subconsciously to, "Hey, we gotta really have a look." I mean, it
right.
all fell in together, but there was more to your point, in new wave, it was more than just the sound, it was the look, it was the image, and you had just like with hair metal, you had hair was teased up, thinking flock of
Yeah,
seagulls. There was makeup involved because really before new wave and then hair metal, you really didn't see other than maybe an Alice Cooper or Kiss, you didn't see dudes with mascara, eyeliner, rouge,
mm,
lipstick, those things, and then with new wave, almost all the bands, it was all about the image with the makeup on the face and the hair. Same thing with hair metal. I mean,
yeah.
all the
Well,
bands.
going back to the synthesizer, when I'm looking at my list, a lot of these bands were not synthesizer bands. They weren't.
Yeah,
They really I would say a vast majority of them weren't synthesizer bands, and I think that just illustrates the misnomer that I think people have with new wave is they equate it as to all kind of that synthesized sound, and it was huge. That was a huge aspect of it because it became a big focal point musically for a lot of bands, but it wasn't that prominent. I mean, XTC was doing it before, but by the time they did Black Sea, their keyboardist had moved on. So,
yeah,
um, a lot of these bands I'm looking at. So I like this because I like the diversity that you get from it. I think it's an underrated, and I'm gonna call it, a scene or a collective.
yeah.
Um, I love it. It's one of my favorite sounds, because it sounds fresh, and you can listen to all of these albums back to back to back to back, and you never get bored because they don't sound the same.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I read a and the reason and you're right, there were so many of the bands, I mean, the Fick being a good example that were I consider more of a guitar band than synthesizer. The interesting thing was for some of these bands, they didn't some of the ones on my list, and I was very, again, focused on that sort of '81 to '84, some of those bands might not even had a guitar player, like, I don't know if Kajagoogoo, I guess they had a guitar player,
Yeah.
but there were some that's what I thought was so interesting about some of these songs. I was going back and listening to them. Was how many of them and you bring up a good point that some of the bands that you had on your list were more guitar oriented. I think the ones on my list were probably more synthesizer oriented, but it was the first time I remember of bands that the guitar wasn't right out front, like on Too Shy,
Oh,
for instance.
for sure.
I don't even know the guitar in that song. It's
Yeah,
the bass,
I'm glad you
electronic.
mentioned that yours were from mainly from '80 to '84. My only 3 of mine, being Killing Jokes, Susie and the Banshees, and Depeche Mode, and all of those bands were doing stuff prior to this. Only 3 of them go outside of 1984. Everything is 1979 to 1984.
That seems like
Once
a
again, to
classic.
me, I think it just further illustrates that if you dig deeper, you'll find that the synthesizer wasn't the all be now, look, a lot of these bands used it for sure, but it wasn't the main focal point for all the now, if you're talking about OMD, if you're talking about yes, if you're talking about
Yeah,
gosh, Kaja Gugu and stuff like that, um, but I think a lot of times it's seen as like this, it just dominated, and it was a big part of the poppier side of things. But I think overall there were a lot of bands that were still rock oriented, or even
yeah,
in the case of English beat, and ska and reggae influence. I just love it. I love the diversity of it. It's another reason why I love the 80s and I love the 90s. I felt like there was a lot of diversity in the 90s. So if somebody comes to us and says, "Hey, give me some Pinnacle," it's going to be all over the map.
yeah.
Absolutely all over, just like this.
Yeah. Yeah, if I had to do a list of my top if someone just said, "You gotta pick your 10 favorite songs of the '80s," 4 or 5 that were on this list would make that. Because it to me, it was there was just so much. And again, some of these bands, they got categorized in a new way, they might not have even really been it was such a broad it's kinda like saying Motley Crue is heavy metal. I
Right.
mean, Motley Crue or Rat or Dokken, they were so much more than that. But
Right.
sometimes some of these guys even got lumped into to the look, the aesthetic.
Yep.
Alright, this was a lot of fun. I hope everyone enjoys this or enjoyed it, and hope you go do the album search and also create your own playlist, and we'll be back next week.
Yeah, hit us up with more emails. Hit us up at revinylpodcast@gmail.com. We really enjoyed that. Thanks so much, Dylan. And yeah,
We will not shy away from the challenge, so bring us something. So,
awesome.
alright, thanks everyone.